All right, good morning. We are going to read chapter 2 today, and it defines initiation. So they're called initiation defined. So let's go on and get into it. The question about, or the question and then initiation is one that is coming more and more before the public. Before many centuries pass, the old mysteries will be restored, then an inner body will exist in the church. The church of the period of which the nucleus is already forming, wherein the first initiation will become exoteric in this sense only, that the taking of the first initiation will be before so very long, that the taking of the first initiation will before so very long be the most sacred ceremony of the church, performed exoterically as one of the mysteries given as at stated periods, attended by those concerned. It will also hold a similar place in the ritual of the Masons. At this ceremony, those ready for the first initiation will be publicly admitted to the lodge by one of its members, authorized to do so by the great Hierophant himself. And now we're going to get into 4 words defined. When we speak of initiation, of wisdom, of knowledge, or of the probationary path, what do we mean? We use the word so glibly without due consideration of the meaning involved. Take, for instance, the word first mentioned. Many are the definitions, and many are the explanations to be found as to its scope, the preparatory steps, the work to be done between initiations, and its results and effects. One thing before all else is apparent to the most superficial student, and that is that the magnitude of the subject is such that in order to deal with it adequately, one should be able to write from the viewpoint of an initiate. When this is not the case, anything that is said may be reasonable, logical, interesting, or suggestive, but not conclusive. Isn't that is very interesting? And there are serious implications in that. The things that you can say, the things that we can say would be reasonable, logical, interesting, but not conclusive. The word initiation comes from 2 Latin words, in, into, and ere, to go. Therefore, the making of a beginning, or the entrance into something. Its widest sense, in the case we are studying, an entrance into the spiritual life or into a fresh stage in that life. It is the first step in the succeeding steps upon the path of holiness. Literally, therefore, a man who has taken the first initiation is one who has taken the first step into the spiritual kingdom, having passed out of the definitely human kingdom into the superhuman, just as he passed out of the animal kingdom into the human at individualization. So he has entered upon the life of the spirit, and for the first time has the right to be called a spiritual man in the technical significance of the word. He is entering upon the 5th or final stage in our present 5-fold evolution, having groped his way through the hall of ignorance during the many ages, and having gone to school in the hall of learning, he is now entering into the university or the hall of wisdom, which he has passed through that school, which when he has passed through that school, he will graduate with his degree as a master of compassion. It might be of benefit to us also if we studied first the difference or the connection between knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Though in ordinary parlance, they are frequently interchanged as used technically, they are dissimilar. Knowledge is the product of the hall of learning. It might be termed the sum total of human discovery and experience, that which can be recognized by the five senses and be correlated, diagnosed, and defined by the use of the human intellect. It is that about which we feel mental certitude, or that which we can ascertain by the use of experiment. It is the compendium of the arts and sciences. It concerns all that deals with the building and developing of the form side of life. Therefore, it concerns the material side of evolution, matter in the solar system, in the planet, in the three worlds of human evolution, and in the bodies of men. Okay, so that's okay. I don't remember having read that before, but that's going to happen a lot. Things always look very differently as we read them again. So knowledge, I'm sorry, it's early here. We have a long day. So knowledge is of the three worlds. Wisdom is the product of the whole of wisdom. It has to do with the development of the life within the form, with the progress of the spirit through those ever-changing vehicles, and with the expansions of consciousness that succeed each other from life to life. It deals with the life side of evolution. Since it deals with the essence of things and not with the things themselves, it is the intuitive apprehension of truth apart from the reasoning faculty, and the innate perception that can distinguish between the false and the true, between the real and the unreal. And it is more than that, for it is also the growing capacity of the thinker to enter increasingly into the mind of the logos, to realize the true inwardness of the great pageant of the universe, to vision the objective, to harmonize more and more with the higher measure. For our present purpose, which is to study somewhat the path of holiness and its various stages, it may be described as the realization of the kingdom of God within, and the apprehension of the kingdom of God without in the solar system. Perhaps it might be expressed as the gradual blending of the paths of the mystic and the occultist, the rearing of the temple of wisdom upon the foundation of knowledge. That makes a lot, that seems to help it make sense to her. Wisdom is the science of the spirit, just as knowledge is the science of the matter. Knowledge is separative and objective, whilst wisdom is synthetic and subjective. Knowledge divides, wisdom unites. Knowledge differentiates, whilst wisdom blends. What then is meant by the understanding? The understanding, what then is meant by the understanding? And I think he's about to define understanding. Let's see here. The understanding may be defined as the faculty of the thinker in time to appropriate knowledge as the foundation for wisdom, that which enables him to adapt the things of form to life of the spirit, and to take the flashes of inspiration that come to him from the hall of wisdom and link them to the facts of the hall of learning. Perhaps the whole idea might be expressed in this way. Wisdom concerns to oneself, knowledge deals with the not self, whilst the understanding is the point of view of the ego or thinker, or his relation between them. And yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, it's the connection. It's the connection between them, which is also the soul, is the connecting faculty, right? Fourth ray. the wanting taking place. In the hall of ignorance, the form controls, the material side of things has the predominance. Man is there polarized in the personality or lower self. In the hall of learning, the higher self or ego strives to dominate that form until gradually a point of equilibrium is reached, where the man is controlled entirely by neither. Sorry, that caught my attention. I'm going to have to read that again. In the hall of ignorance, the form controls, the material side of things has the predominance. Man is there polarized in the personality or lower self. In the hall of learning, the higher self or ego strives to dominate that form until gradually a point of equilibrium is reached, where the man is controlled by neither. Okay, so he's controlled by neither. The hall of ignorance, the hall of learning, or the personality, or the ego. Later, the ego controls more and more until the hall of wisdom, it dominates in the three lower worlds, and in increasing degree, the inherent divinity assumes the mastery. You should know that ego in the Ageless Wisdom is referring to the soul, the causal body. So that's, you can make those correlations. If, the sooner you can, don't even think about it. Just let that go. And now you got it. And because we know that the ego is often referred to as the personality or the the lower self in some other places, but the ego is probably deeper than what that understanding is, where that's coming from. So we have to remember this is very deep stuff. All right, aspects of initiation. So we just defined those words there. I think we got a pretty good handle on that. Now we're going to move on to aspects of initiation. Initiation, or the process of undergoing an expansion of consciousness, is part of the normal process of evolutionary developments viewed on a large scale and not from the standpoint of the individual. When viewed from the individual standpoint, it has come to be narrowed down to the moment wherein the evolving unit definitely apprehends that, by dint of his own effort, aided by the advice and suggestions of the watching teachers of the race, he has reached a point wherein a certain range of knowledge of a subjective nature from the physical plane point of view is his. It is in the nature of that experience wherein a pupil in a school realizes suddenly that he has mastered a lesson, and that the rationale of a subject and the method of procedure are his to use intelligently. These moments of intelligent apprehension follow the evolving monad throughout his long pilgrimage. And if you haven't heard the word monad yet, we had seen it when we had gone through, looked at that chart yesterday. But we are monads. That's our higher self, or our Father in heaven. But they say we are all monads working towards getting back to that. What has been misinterpreted somewhat at this stage of comprehension is the fact that at various periods, the emphasis is laid on different grades of expansion, and always the hierarchy endeavors to bring the race to the point where its units will have some idea of the next step to be taken. Each initiation marks the passing of the pupil in the hall of wisdom into a higher class, marks the clear shining forth of the inner fire and the transition from one point of polarization to another, entails the realization of an increasing unity with all that lives and the essential oneness of the self with all selves. It results in a horizon that continuously enlarges until it includes the sphere of creation. So how about that? That's a pretty expansive consciousness, wouldn't you say? That you can include, and it's always been said to me that, it's a process of inclusive, becoming more and more inclusive. And you open up to more and more of creation, and you accept, there's it's process, you accept it, and then you add one with it in a sense. It is a growing capacity to see and hear on all planes. So we become more sensitive. It is an increased consciousness of God's plan for the world, and then increased ability to enter into those plans and to further them. So it opens up fields of service. It is the effort in the abstract mind to pass an examination. It is the effort in the abstract mind to pass an examination. It is the honor class in the master's school, and is within the attainment of those souls whose karma permits and whose efforts suffice to fulfill the aim. Initiation leads to the mount whence vision can be had, a vision of the eternal now, wherein past, present, and future exist as one. A vision of the pageant of the races, with the golden thread of pedigree carried through the many types, a vision of the golden sphere that holds in unison all the many evolutions of our system, deva, human, animal, vegetable, mineral, and elemental, and through which the pulsating life can be clearly seen beating in regular rhythm. A vision of the logoic thought form on the archetypal plane, a vision that grows from initiation to initiation until it embraces all the solar system. It's pretty incredible. So we're getting a picture, we're kind of seeing where this goes. Master DK's drawn a picture out for us. Initiation leads to the stream. Once entered, sweeps a man onward until it carries him to the feet of the Lord of the world, to the feet of his Father in heaven, to the feet of the threefold Logos. Initiation leads to the cave, within whose circumscribing walls the pairs of opposites are known, and the secret of good and evil is revealed. It leads to the cross and to that utter sacrifice which must transpire before perfect liberation is attained, and the initiate stands free of all earth's fetters, held by naught in the three worlds. It leads through the hall of wisdom and puts into a man's hands the key to all information, systemic and cosmic, in graduated sequence. It reveals the hidden mystery that lies at the heart of the solar system. It leads from one state of consciousness to another. As each state is entered, the horizon enlarges, the vista extends, and the comprehension includes more and more until the expansion reaches a point where the self embraces all selves, including all that is moving and unmoving, as phrased by an ancient scripture. Initiation involves ceremony. It is this aspect that has been emphasized in the minds of men, perhaps a little to the exclusion of the true significance. Primarily, it involves the capacity to see, hear, and comprehend, and to synthesize and correlate knowledge. It does not necessarily involve the development of the psychic faculties, but it does entail the inner comprehension that sees the value underlying the form and recognizes the purpose of pervading circumstances. It is the capacity that senses the lesson to be learned from any given occurrence and event, and that by means of these comprehensions and recognitions affects an hourly, weekly, yearly growth and expansion. This process of gradual expansion, the result of the definite effort and strenuous right thinking and living of the aspirant himself, and not of some occult teacher performing an occult rite, leads to what might term a crisis. So we could see here that, and this should, we should repeat this because it's very important. Comprehensions and recognitions affect an hourly, weekly, and yearly growth and expansion. Now we know that there's cycles, and we go through these cycles or the darker months, and then we come into the light, and then we have the festivals of the spring and early summer, and the sun is closest, and we're really things are very energetic during that time. We kind of get energized, and then it seems like as fall comes around, we ground that energy, and we do it again. And I guess, depending on how much time was given, and then we'll see in these next few chapters here, but it's about how much effort and strenuous right thinking and living the aspirant puts in. All right, so this all leads to what one might term a crisis. At this crisis, which necessitates the aid of a master, a definite act of initiation is performed, which produces a result on some one body. So this master, a definite act of initiation is performed, which, acting on a particular center, produces a result on some one body. It keys the atoms to a certain pitch and enables a new rate of rhythm to be attained. This ceremony of initiation marks a point of attainment. It does not bring about attainment, as is so often the misconception. So it's an entrance into a new thing, right? We're entering into a new thing. It's marking the culmination, it seems, right? This ceremony of initiation marks a point of attainment. It doesn't bring about attainment. An expansion of consciousness that admits the personality into the wisdom attained by the ego, and in the higher initiations into the consciousness of the monad. A brief period of enlightenment wherein the initiate sees that portion of the path that lies ahead to be trodden, and wherein he shares consciously in the great plan of evolution. After initiation, the work to be done consists largely in making that expansion of consciousness part of the equipment for the practical use of the personality, and in mastering that portion of the path that has yet to be traversed. The ceremony of, now we're into this next section, which is called the place and effect of initiation. The ceremony of initiation takes place on the three higher subplanes of the mental plane, and on the three higher planes according to the initiation. The five-pointed star at the initiations on the mental plane flashes out above the head of the initiate. This concerns the first initiations which are undergone in the causal vehicle. It has been said that the first two initiations take place upon the astral plane, but this is incorrect, and the statement has given rise to a misunderstanding. They are felt profoundly in connection with the astral and physical bodies and the lower mental and affect their control. The chief effect being felt in those bodies, the initiate may interpret them as having taken place on the planes concerned, as the vividness of the effect and the stimulation of the first two initiations work out largely in the astral body. But it must ever be remembered that the major initiations are taken in the causal body or dissociated from that body on the Buddhic plane or Atmic plane. At the final two initiations, which set a man free from the three worlds and enabled him to function in the body of vitality of the Logos and wield that force, the initiate becomes the five-pointed star, and it descends upon him, merges in him, and he is seen at its very center. This descent is brought about by the action of the initiator wielding the rod of power, and puts a man in touch with the center in the body of the planetary Logos of which he is part, and this consciously. The two initiations, called the sixth and seventh, take place on the Buddhic and Atmic planes. The five-pointed star blazes forth from within itself, as the esoteric phrase has it, and becomes the seven-pointed star. It descends upon the man and enters within the flame. Again, the four initiations prior to that of the adept mark respectively the attainment of certain proportions of atomic matter in the bodies. For instance, at the first initiation, 1/4 atomic matter; at the second, 1/2 atomic matter; at the third, 3/4 atomic matter, and so on to completion. Since Buddhi is the unifying principle or the welder of all, at the fifth initiation, the adept lets the lower vehicles go and stands in his Buddhic sheath. He creates thence his body of manifestation. This should be, working in us to give us an entirely new idea of what radiation is, what light is, what's meant by light, what's meant to see and hear. We're digging into a lot of things here. You can see these, some of this. I've heard this in music. We've heard these things mentioned before. These things have been known, and you can feel these things in the body. They are registered and known. So there are physical changes in the etheric body. And it's seen outwardly in the physical as well. I mean, it certainly is. Each initiation gives more control on the rays, if one may so express it, although this does not adequately convey the idea. Words so often mislead. At the fifth initiation, when the adept stands master in the three worlds, he controls more or less, according to his line of development, 5 rays that are especially manifesting at the time he takes the initiation. At the sixth initiation, if he takes the degree higher, he gains power on another ray. And at the seventh initiation, he wields power on all the rays. The sixth initiation marks the point of attainment of the Christ and brings the synthetic ray of the system under his control, which is the second ray of love, wisdom. And we need to remember that initiation gives the initiate power on the rays and not power over the rays, for this marks a very definite difference. Every initiate has, of course, for his primary or spiritual ray, one of the three major rays, and the ray of his monad is the one on which he at length gains power. The love ray, or the synthetic ray of the system, is the final one achieved. Okay, that's interesting. Those who pass away from the earth after the fifth initiation, or those who do not become masters in physical incarnation, take their subsequent initiations elsewhere in the system. All are in the Logoic consciousness. One great fact to be borne in mind is that the initiations of the planet or of the solar system are but the preparatory initiations of admission into the Greater Lodge on Sirius. And there's much more talk about, all the Lodge on Sirius in some of the other books. Certainly, this all gets built upon. We're laying the foundation with this book right now. So, we're going to go much deeper. We have the symbolism held for us fairly well in Masonry, and in combining the Masonic method with what we are told of the steps on the path of holiness, we get an approximate picture. Let us enlarge somewhat. The first four initiations of the solar system correspond to the four initiations of the threshold prior to the first cosmic initiation. The fifth initiation corresponds to the first cosmic initiation, that of entered apprentice in Masonry, and makes a man master, an entered apprentice on the Lodge of Sirius. The sixth initiation is analogous to the second degree in Masonry, whilst the seventh initiation makes the adept a master mason of the Brotherhood on Sirius. A master, therefore, is one who has taken the seventh planetary initiation, the fifth solar initiation, and the first Sirian or cosmic initiation. At one-ment, so we're going to leave that now. We're moving on to at one-ment, which is the result of initiation. A point that we need to grasp is that each successive initiation brings about a more complete unification of the personality and the ego, and on higher levels still with the monad. The whole evolution of the human spirit is progressive at one-ment. In the at one-ment between the ego and the personality lies hid the mystery of the Christian doctrine of the atonement. One unification takes place at the moment of individualization, when man becomes a conscious rational entity in contradistinction to the animals. As evolution proceeds, successive at one-ments occur. At one-ments on all levels, emotional, intuitional, spiritual, and divine, consists in consciousness, continuous functioning. So it's happening, which is on all levels and progressive. In all cases, it is preceded by a burning through the medium of the inner fire, and by the destruction through sacrifice of all that separates. The approach to unity is through destruction of the lower, and of that forms, and all that forms a barrier. Take an illustration, the web that separates the etheric body and the emotional. When that web has been burned away by the inner fire, the communication between the bodies of the personality becomes continuous and complete, and the three lower vehicles function as one. You have a somewhat analogous situation on higher levels, though the parallel cannot be pushed to detail. The intuition corresponds to the emotional, and the four higher levels of the mental plane to the etheric. In the destruction of the causal body at the time of the fourth initiation, called symbolically the crucifixion, you have a process analogous to the burning of the web that leads to the unification of the bodies of the personality. The disintegration that is a part of the Arhat initiation leads to unity between the ego and the monad. So the soul, basically the soul and the Father, expressing itself in the triad. It is the perfect at one-ment. The whole process is therefore for the purpose of making man consciously one. First, with himself and those in incarnation with him. Second, with his higher self and thus with all selves. Third, with his spirit or Father, the Father in heaven, and thus with all monads. And fourth, with the logos, the three in one and the one in three. Man becomes a conscious human being through the instrumentality of the Lords of the Flame, through their enduring sacrifice. Man becomes a conscious ego with the consciousness of the higher self at the third initiation through the instrumentality of the Masters and of the Christ, and through their sacrifice in taking physical incarnation for the helping of the world. Man unites with the monad at the fifth initiation through the instrumentality of the world of the Lord, solitary watcher, the great sacrifice. Man becomes one with the logos through the instrumentality of the one about whom not may be said. All right, well, this is very interesting. It's great to be reading this book again. We're going to learn a lot. I'm going to learn a lot. I'm going to, what I'll do is I'll go through in my mind what we just went through, and I'll try to focus on it through the day at different times, and try to synthesize, help this stuff merge in with what's already there, like find the pieces that I don't have, and add it to them, add it to the rest, or just let that process happen. And it does, it inevitably does too. But I do enjoy contemplation and having a focus on, the subjective throughout the day. That really seems to help. So, all right. Well, I have a long day of work ahead, but I'm gonna we will get at this hopefully again tomorrow morning. We'll see you soon. Have a good day.